Welcome to a new motorcycling video. In this video I'll be going along some familiar roads and some unfamiliar roads. I'll be going to some places that you've probably seen on other videos, passing through some towns and villages you've probably heard of before, but I may be going on roads that you haven't seen before. It's called the Teardrop Ride because the map that you'll see at the end of the last clip is of the route looks a bit like a teardrop. There are about 8 or 9 clips in this ride, so hopefully you'll stay with it till the very end and enjoy all the clips and all the scenery. If you decide at any point that whatever it is that I'm going to talk about in that particular clip doesn't interest you, then by all means just turn the volume down and enjoy the scenery. If you have any feedback or any comment that you'd like to make about anything that I've said in the video, then you're welcome to do that via Facebook or via YouTube if that's how you come across the videos. You're welcome to share them with other people, and you're invited to subscribe to the video, to the YouTube channel if you want. Okay, so in this ride I'm starting at my house and I'm heading west of Goulburn initially on the Crookwood Road. This clip will take me to the Woodhouselee Rd. It's about 15 minutes long, and so in that period I'd like to talk about a few things that are not motorcycle related. They're to do with quarantine laws and vaccines and things like that. So if you don't want to hear about those sort of things, as I say, just turn down the volume and enjoy the scenery. So I want you first of all to cast your mind back, if you can, to a time a couple of years ago when Johnny Depp was in Australia to make one of those Pirates of the Caribbean movies. He brought his dogs to Australia, and under Australia's very strict quarantine laws, he broke the law. We have very strict quarantine laws here in Australia to protect our native wildlife, which is any Australian would know is unique in the world, but also it protects our native plants, and it protects both the animals and crops that we use for our food supply. There are also laws regarding the movement of plants and animals in some cases between states. So for example, when you get to Tasmania, you must abandon any fruit that you've brought with you into the garbage tins, or even before you get onto the ferry in Victoria. Now the reason for that is last year, for example, when I was in Tasmania for a long period of the year, there was an outbreak of fruit fly in Tasmania. Fruit fly had never been known in Tasmania before that, and it devastated a lot of crops. And the cause is thought to be bananas that were brought into Tasmania without going through the proper sterilisation processes, or somebody possibly bringing in fruit and not abandoning it at the collection points as they should have done. So we have these very strict quarantine laws. We have them to protect the native wildlife, the native plant life, and also the food supply in Australia. And I want you to keep that in mind as I talk about the other things. Now, in Australia, we also have pretty strict rules regarding vaccination for children. There are diseases like polio, diphtheria, whooping cough, mumps, measles and rubella that no longer or virtually unknown in Australia now, because 95% of the population of Australia, or of Australia's children, are injected or immunised either at birth and then with a booster at about 5 years of age to prevent the outbreak of those diseases. Those diseases can be pretty devastating for children. Polio used to be at one stage called infantile paralysis because it led to paralysis of children, and they spent the rest of their life living in an iron lung or with their parts of their body in painful calipers to try and straighten and make their bones work. So we have these vaccines, and the vaccines work, and we know they work because the diseases that they immunise us against no longer exist. Now, people have a right, apparently, not to be vaccinated, and a very small percentage of children are not vaccinated. But the fact is that because we have 95% or thereabouts of people vaccinated, or of children vaccinated, we have what is referred to as a herd immunity. So sufficient people are immunised so that if an outbreak of whooping cough or diphtheria or measles or mumps or rubella occurs in the community, it will not affect large numbers of children and can be treated with just the individuals who are infected. So keep that in mind as well. Now, prior to this pandemic happening, most Australians could go where they wanted, when they wanted, with whomever they wanted. You could go to the movies, you could go to the pub, you could go to the club, you could go to the restaurant, you could go and do your shopping and so on. Now, those things were all there. Now they're being referred to as freedoms that are being given back to us if we behave like good people. The good people have stayed at home when they've been told to stay at home. The good people have worked from home when they've been told to work from home. The good people have isolated themselves from their friends and their family and so on. And the good people have all gone and got their vaccines. And the vaccines, again, we know work and have been developed very, very quickly, but we know they're safe and we know they work. So the good people have done all the right things, and we're now allegedly being given back things that we already had. But in being given those things back, these so-called freedoms that we're now allowed to do, we must check into every venue that we want to check into with a QR code. I understand that. I understand the purpose of that, and I accept that. The purpose of that is to be able to trace if there was an outbreak of COVID in a particular community. They want to know who's been where it started from, and who's been in contact with either the place or the people that have been to that place. So that's what the QR code is for. But on top of that, you must prove your COVID safe status by showing that you've been doubly vaccinated. And if you're not doubly vaccinated, you're not allowed into the venues. Now, think about that for a moment. You can't go to the local library and borrow a book if you are not doubly vaccinated. Now, what that's got to do with everything else is coming to professional sport in a moment, but I want to reinforce this point. The good people have done all the things they've been told to do. They've been vaccinated. They prove their vaccine status by wherever they check in, it comes up on the QR code and it comes up that they're doubly vaccinated and they're allowed to enter the venue. Now, what does all that got to do with professional sport? Well, as I understand it, the AFL have said, that's the Australian Football League for those outside of Australia, the sport that originated in Victoria and is played nationwide, have said all of their players must be vaccinated before the competition starts next year. Now, I suppose the big test will come when somebody is not vaccinated and they decide whether they're going to allow that person to play or not. The NRL has said that unvaccinated players will be allowed to mingle with the vaccinated players as of December the 1st. The A-League, which governs the playing of round ball football or soccer, have made no decisions about it, and as I understand it, there are players within the A-League who are not vaccinated and who are not going to be vaccinated. Now, I want you to think about this. Some of these guys are on 5 and 6 figures or even 7-figure salaries. They are in the privileged position of being able to do what it is they do, kick a football or chase other people who kick a football or something like that, while you have been working from home, while you have been on JobKeeper or JobSeeker or one of those things, while your hours have been reduced, while your income has been reduced. These guys have been continuing to earn their large salaries. Some of them are declining to get vaccinated. That's their choice, but you can't go to the library and borrow a book without being vaccinated. You cannot go to the games without being vaccinated. Now, on top of that, this brings me to tennis. Let me say, first of all, I'm not a tennis fan. I don't watch tennis. I don't have any interest in it. And I try to avoid it when it's on TV. But I understand that the Australian government and the people who run tennis in Australia were trying to find a way to allow unvaccinated players or players who refuse to declare their vaccine status to come into Australia and play at the Australian Championships or whatever it's called in Melbourne in January. Now, we know that not only is that tennis tournament on, there are tennis tournaments in Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide. There's another sort of competition in Perth. There's even a tennis tournament in Burnie in Tasmania, for heaven's sake. So we have these people who want to come into the country who are not vaccinated, or who, if they are vaccinated, will not declare their status, but you must declare your status before you can even borrow a book from the library. They want to come into the country, they want to play tennis, when the people who work at the venues, at the bars, at the cafes, at the restaurants, who sell the merchandise, the people who collect the balls, the people who fill up the water coolers, the people who pick up the sweaty towels, all of those people and everybody who's a spectator must be doubly vaccinated to be able to go to sit at the arena and watch people hit a tennis ball with a piece of wood or metal and so on. Now, some people might argue that an individual's health record is their own business. And yes, that is the case. We're not asking anyone to reveal all of their medical ailments and health issues and whatever. We're just asking them to say when they get off the plane and they interact with the border force people at the airport, prove to us that you are vaccinated, or better still, prove to us before you come to Australia, before you get on the plane, when you apply for the visa, show us that you are vaccinated. If you are not vaccinated, then you simply can't come to play tennis. Now, let's remember that, keep in mind, that the people who play in the first round of the Australian Open tennis tournament and get knocked out, otherwise they're losers at the first round, they get $20,000. $20,000 is sometimes more than half the income of some people in this country. Those who are on JobKeeper or JobSeeker, I beg your pardon, or work casual hours, might not earn $40,000 in a year. So $20,000 is a large chunk of money for losing in the first round. The people at the top of that sport earn millions of dollars for playing their sport. There might be some people who'd say, well, if the top players, for example, Novak Djokovic, I understand, is one player who's refused to reveal his vaccine status. If he doesn't come, then the tournament's not going to be as good as it would be otherwise. That's his choice. We have rules about who comes into this country. We have laws that say you must fulfil certain obligations before you can apply for a visa to come to this country. And the states have an obligation under their various health acts to say people who present a health risk cannot be allowed into the community or cannot be allowed to move around in the community. That's how they've enacted these lockdown laws and all this sort of stuff that we've had to live with for months and months and months now. So, it's my view that these people, tennis players, others professional sports players, they're either not aware of or they're not concerned about the privileged position that they're in, where they're earning hundreds of thousands of dollars and in some cases millions of dollars to play sport, while other people have lost their jobs, businesses have gone out of business altogether, people are on reduced hours and on reduced incomes, people have been required to be inoculated, people have been required to prove that inoculation status before, as I've said now 3 or 4 times, before they can simply borrow a book from the library, never mind grocery shopping or shoe shopping or buy clothes or go out to dinner or anything like this. Now, some of my point of view here might seem a bit harsh to people who really love tennis and want to see the world's best players, but think of today, the 28th of October, 25 deaths were announced in Victoria as a result of COVID. And not all those people were old people who were going to die anyway, who had underlying health conditions. There was I thought the ABC said that someone as young as 40 had died from complications from COVID. We have a responsibility and an obligation to protect the health of the community. That means that we say to people from overseas who want to come here, you must do these things before you come here. If you don't do those things, you cannot come here. If you choose not to do those things, you cannot come here and play your sport. You can go elsewhere and do it, that's fine. And if the tournament is not as good, that's the decision that particular person has made, and they have to live with the consequences of it just like anybody else lives with the consequences of a decision that they make. That's my view on vaccines, quarantine laws, COVID and professional sport. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. This video's coming close to the end. I'm on the Crookwell Road, which is heading west of Goulburn. Very shortly I will come up to the turn-off on the Woodhouselee Rd. That's the sort of back road that takes you around a back way into Crookwell. You would have seen it in my last video when I did the Middle Arm Road ride. In fact, you can see, I'm just about to turn onto it, I think, shortly. A bit hard to see with the small screen while I've got the audio recorder open at the same time. But if you watch my Middle Arm Ride video, you would have seen parts of the Woodhouselee Road in the last part, or one of the last clips of that ride. So thank you for watching. I'll be back with the second part shortly, and I'll have something to talk about which may not be motorcycle related, but I hope that you'll find interesting. As I said before, if you have any comments, you're welcome to add them in the appropriate places. So thank you for watching.